It was a moment that stunned even the most seasoned members of the Vatican's inner circle. In a quiet room behind the ancient marble walls of the Holy See, a gathering of senior cardinals revealed something unexpected, something sacred, something profoundly personal. As the words were spoken, one man, Luis Antonio Tagle, visibly broke down. His tears weren't born of grief alone. They were an emotional reaction to something far deeper. What had just been shared wasn't a standard announcement. It wasn't merely another formality in the long series of protocols that follow the death of a pope. No, this was different. This was Pope Francis's final wish, one that now echoes across the world, potentially shaping the Church's future and shifting its very soul. Pope Francis, the first Jesuit pope, the first from Latin America, and the first to truly live the humility he preached, passed away at the age of 88. His health had been failing for months, with strokes, pneumonia, and long-term lung issues wearing down his once tireless body. But even as the physical strength faded, his spiritual message burned brighter. Francis wasn't only concerned about his legacy, he was deeply focused on what, and more importantly who, would come next. Those closest to him knew he was thinking beyond mortality. And now, with his final wish made public, the world knows it too. According to witnesses, when the cardinals revealed Pope Francis's personal request, Luis Antonio Tagle wept. Those tears weren't theatrical, they were raw, visible evidence of what insiders had long suspected. That this was not just a farewell. It was a passing of the torch. Though the Pope didn't name a successor, as protocol prohibits, many believe his actions and his final words made it abundantly clear who he hoped would lead after him. And for Tagle, the moment wasn't one of triumph. It was one of overwhelming responsibility, fear, reverence, and love. A legacy had been laid at his feet, and it demanded far more than status. It demanded transformation. Pope Francis's vision for the Church was never rooted in power. It was rooted in service, in walking with the poor, in making the Church not a fortress of hierarchy but a sanctuary of compassion. From his first days as Pope, he turned down the traditional trappings of opulence. No golden chairs. No palace-like residence. He lived among the people and spoke in terms that everyday Catholics understood. His repeated message was one of unity, humility, and radical empathy. And when the time came to ensure that message would survive beyond him, he did what he had always done. He placed trust in someone who embodied those values. Luis Antonio Tagle, the man now being whispered about in sacred circles and debated in media halls, was born far from Rome's power structures. From Manila, he rose through the Church not by chasing ambition, but by embodying spiritual service. He became known as the Asian Francis, a cardinal who could speak eloquently to refugees, sit with the impoverished, and address massive theological issues without losing touch with humanity. Francis had long included him in high-level decisions and entrusted him with some of the Church's most sensitive matters. Many now believe that when the Pope made his final wish, it was with Tagle firmly in mind, not with command, but with deep spiritual hope. But the road ahead is anything but easy. The Catholic Church is facing perhaps its most consequential turning point in centuries. On one side is the weight of tradition, 2,000 years of rituals, customs, and conservative hierarchy. On the other is a rapidly changing world that's demanding relevance, inclusion, and reform. The youth of the Church want a faith that listens. They want a church that wrestles with modern questions, LGBTQ+ rights, women in leadership, transparency over scandals, and spiritual unity beyond doctrine. Francis acknowledged this in his papacy. His final wish wasn't simply about who wears the papal white next, but about what kind of church will emerge into the next generation. Tagle sits at the crossroads. Loved by progressives, respected by traditionalists, he is one of the few figures seen as capable of balancing these opposing forces. His theology is grounded, his empathy is unshakable, and his presence is quiet but powerful. He does not demand attention, it follows him. But even for someone like Tagle, the pressures are immense. A future pope today does not inherit only a position of faith, but a position of global influence amidst deep polarization. And if Tagle accepts the unspoken charge of Francis's wish, he will walk straight into a storm of scrutiny, expectation, and resistance. The Vatican is known for its secrecy. The papal conclave is perhaps the most ancient and mysterious ritual still active in modern times. When a new pope is elected, it is done behind locked doors, through prayer, debate, and ballots. But many are saying the decision may already have been made in spirit. Francis couldn't appoint a successor outright, but his influence, his years of elevating allies to cardinal positions, has undeniably shaped the makeup of those who will cast votes. And in that context, his final wish becomes more than sentiment. It becomes direction. Those tears Tagle shed may have been more than grief, they might have been silent acceptance. But still, Tagle has said nothing publicly. His silence has been powerful. His lack of self-promotion has only fueled belief that he is, perhaps reluctantly, ready to serve. Those closest to the situation say he has withdrawn in prayer, reflecting not just on the moment, but on what it means to carry the dream of a pope beloved by millions. The question is no longer, who will be the next pope? But, will Tagle step forward, and if he does, will the world let him lead? The future Francis envisioned was not a Western-dominated church with top-down pronouncements. He dreamed of a global church, one that would speak not just from Rome, but from Manila, Nairobi, Buenos Aires. His last wish wasn't just about Tagle, it was about representation, about shifting the center of power toward the people who live the faith every day, not just those who preside over it. For too long, the Church's leadership has reflected its European roots while the majority of growth has come from the global South. Francis's final gesture sought to correct that imbalance. But make no mistake, if Tagle accepts the mantle, it will not be met without resistance. There are powerful factions within the Vatican who see Francis's reforms as reckless and threatening. They long for the return of stricter orthodoxy, firmer boundaries, and a church that does not compromise. Tagle would face not only global expectations, but internal opposition. He would need to lead not just as pope, but as mediator, visionary, and reformer. And history has shown that such roles often come at great personal cost. Still, Tagle remains the one name capable of uniting fractured parts of the church. His tears, his silence, his lifelong service, all point to a man deeply aware of what lies ahead. If he becomes the next pope, it will mark not only the continuation of Pope Francis's vision, but the beginning of something even greater, a church that reflects the people, the struggles, and the hopes of a truly global faith. And so, the world waits. The conclave will proceed. The smoke will rise. The name will be called. But behind it all, behind the ceremony, one question will linger. Will Pope Francis's last wish be fulfilled? Will the Church move forward in faith, in courage, and in love? Because in the end, this story is no longer just about succession. It's about legacy. About whether one man's dream of a more compassionate church can survive the forces that have always resisted change. As Pope Francis once said, the measure of greatness is not in power, but in service. In the heart of Tagle, perhaps, that truth still burns. And that may be the very flame that lights the Church's path forward.